Okay, guys, this is going to be part two of my Return of the Jedi full film breakdown. So where we left off, R2 and 3PO were called over from Han and Leia to help open the doors to the shield generator on Endor. So remember, R2 comes over. R2 kind of goes to the side, tries to fix it, gets electrocuted, gets thwarmed back. Um, and then the space battle. The space battle is great. Remember, sometimes when you watch the space battle, you have to forget that this came out in 1983 because the space battle in this film is brilliant. You got A wings, B wings, Y wings, X wings. You got Mon Calamari's ships and Akbar. It's a trap. On top of all that stuff with Wedge and then Millennium Falcon with Lando and I forgot to mention my part one breakdown with like Han being worried about Lando and Han and Lando taking over the ship and then losing a piece of the Falcon. He says not even a scratch. Then obviously they lose the satellite dish later. And then I forgot landing on Endor with I don't know, Chewie, just fly casual, you know, call sign Meridian, get on something Meridian. I feel like it was Meridian or something. We're in danger of the mission. I shouldn't have come. Oh, relax. It could have been any ship. Vader can be on any ship or something like that. Anyways, the space battle is great. Mount Calamari ships, Star Destroyers, Death Stars, A-Wings, X-Wings, Y-Wings, Millennium Falcon, just utilized to the best of the abilities. Whether you talk about, the whole A-Wing crashing into the Star Destroyer, and just I remember that iconic shot of the Star Destroyer going into the Death Star, and you see that big explosion part of it. Great stuff. And then once Han, destroys the Death Star, or I'll get to that in a second. Then the throne room sequence. The throne room is great. I just remember that iconic shot of the elevator doors opening, and you just see Vader in the back and Luke standing in front of him. That imagery of like Vader looming over Luke was just magnificent. Then you have the whole talk between Emperor and Luke, and that just stuff was great. Talking about the Emperor. I also forgot the Emperor arriving in with the cane, with it was Ian McDermott's great voice. And you forget that Ian McDermott, when he did this film, was only 39. It's crazy. And you have Luke saying, and he says, your confidence in the empires is gonna be your downfall. And your faith in your rebel friends, your overconfidence in rebel friends is yours. And just talking. Then they will die. That throne room and the iconic imagery of like the spider web of a shield in the back, and Luke looking over to see his rebel alliance destroying, and you could just see in this tension. There's just so much dark side tension in the scene where Luke would look out, see the battle brewing outside, and then he'd look at the saber, then he'd look at the Emperor, then he'd look at Vader, and then they'd talk, and then he'd chat, and then once again Luke is cramming into Vader. Turn. This is not good. Turn. He keeps, and I think it's just great, and I just think the location of the throne room with it being dark, I think, and you see like the Emperor looming large over it. Then ultimately, and just the whole conversation, talking about the Emperor's plans for the dark side and how he is so confident in Luke, but then Luke is just so confident in Vader, and I think you kind of have this two kind of people so confident in what they believe. Vader, Emperor, confident that Luke can turn. Luke confident that Vader can turn. And then you have Vader in the middle, and you could see him just looking and looking and looking and looking, and he doesn't talk this whole sequence. He's just observing. He's just taking it all in. Luke uses the Force, tries to kill that, and Vader blocks it. Right? And that starts the fight. Anyways, so back on Endor. Sorry, I gotta get you. Chewie does the iconic Tarzan swing with Ewoks, jumps onto the STSD, takes out the guy inside, with a few Ewoks. I think one of them was Wicket. Then destroys another STST. Good old Chewie and STST action. Remember, so then Han has to, open the doors on it by himself. Kind of uses the wires. Then instead of opening the door, he closes the second door, which was a great comedic scene. Stormtroopers come, have a surprise attack, and shoot Leia in the arm, and then they come closer to him. And I love this scene, where it's like Leia has a shot in her arm. She's holding, and then Han goes on to put her hand, and then there's blood on his hand, which, besides the cantina scene in New Hope where the guy chops off his arm and has blood, I think this is honestly the only real scene in the original trilogy to have blood, besides the scene where the guy's the arm cut off in New Hope. And then Leia peers off to show Han that she has a blaster. And then Han says, "I love you." And she says, "I know." And that's like, perfect poeticness. Because I think that's just the real connection, and I think that's like truly the moment where like they truly can admit to each other they fall in love, because Leia admits to it in Empire, and Han admits it to this film, where I love where it's like these are the type of characters who might not necessarily straight up tell each other I love you too, but it's someone who it's like, you can say that you love me, and I'll acknowledge, type thing. And then Leia gets up, shoots the stormtroopers. The STSD comes. Chewie's inside, and then Han films a message of him in Empire outfits. All the guards inside come out, open the door, then figure out it was a trap. Then they get surrounded by Ewoks, rebels, Han, Chewie, the STST, and then Han just shrugs. I love that when Han just shrugs, where it's like everybody's celebrating. He's like, I don't know. And then they go in, set up the bombs. Then he runs out. I love the scene where they run out, and of course, our heroes never look at the bombs. Classic. Run, duck, and then he looks back, blows. So now, the assault, which by the way, again, the assault on the Death Star. Again, the space battle, I couldn't overthink it enough. And I love the surprise trap. It's a trap. I think it is smart, because like the assault, they probably wouldn't have done the space battle. The space fight, the space attack, they probably wouldn't have done the space attack if they hadn't assumed that the base wasn't operational. And Emperor's like, during throne room scene, Emperor's like, and I'm afraid the base is fully operational. And then Death Star blows off one of the Mon Calamari ships, and then that's when Akbar says, "It's a trap!" But I mean, I love that surprise of the Death Star being fully operational, because you don't just have the Death Star and not utilize it at all. But obviously they did, and they blew up a few ships, and obviously you got the Star Destroyer, and then so first they kind of decided to blow up the Star Destroyer. I mean, yeah, a lot of X-wings, A-wings, they all go down. A lot of them do. So I think you do feel a sense of casualties in this battle. I remember that iconic shot of like you're in the cockpit, where like the camera's in the cockpit. Why am I getting so itchy on my nose? The cockpit's like inside the Falcon, and it shows like from the cockpit view of just swarms of X-wings coming. It's just great stuff, and you got all the pilots and all that stuff. Just great. I really I love all that stuff. It's really great. So yeah. Trying to think. Oh yeah, the lightsaber duel. So anyways, they fight. Luke and Vader fight, and you can just tell the fight up. And I love it's like the first half is almost not really like it's a fight. It's like a confrontation, but once in a while they'll get into an interaction, and that's kind of what I love about this fight, where it's like it's a fight, but I feel like it's more on an emotional level. But yeah, and you could just see Luke's reluctance, where he's not trying to fight, he's trying to more and more get away from Vader. Kicks Vader down the steps. Vader goes up the steps. Luke tries to hide. Then they fight a little bit. Then Luke jumps up, and then jumps onto like that bridge. Vader throws the lightsaber. Luke dodges, but I mean, Vader in that moment didn't try to kill Luke. He knew Luke was gonna dodge it, and he did it in a way where it's like he could have tried to do something else. He could have, found a way to corral him and stuff. And so Then Luke hides, and I love the imagery of like Luke's hiding behind a column underneath kind of shaft where there's not a lot of light, and half of his face is in the light and half of it's not, where it's like, so you kind of see half of Luke's shadow and half of his light. And I love Vader's talking where it's like, you know you can't deny it. If you have a twin sister, you have a twin sister. Perhaps if you turn, maybe she will. Then Luke lashes out. Because I feel like, once again, I talked about this earlier in my part 1, where it's like in many ways, all Luke wants is family. And I think that kind of sets off is, yes, he had Uncle Owen, yes, he had Aunt Beru, and even technically then, they're not really blood family. And even then, they weren't nice, they weren't a father figure, and they weren't a mother figure. They were not even in Aunt May and Uncle Ben situation. They were more of like a Harry Potter situation, where it's like his parents are like the sisters who don't care. And it's not like Owen's mean, it's not like Aunt Beru is mean or anything. It's just that they were never the role in Luke's life that a mother would need to be and a father would be. And so Leia, being that she is blood, being that she is a sister, and someone who is nice, someone who is kind, someone who is not necessarily innocent by any stretch of the imagination, but still someone who Luke cares about on a deep level, because it's like she is family, she is blood. She is someone Luke can trust, and even though he wants Vader to be in his life, wants Anakin as a father to be in his life, and wants him to be redeemed, I think that sets him off on the dark path, where I think for that split second, he starts to realize, if you're going to threaten your own family again, this time with Leia, it's just one of those things where it's like, you don't bring her into this situation. That, ticks Luke off. And then, like, the choreography, people criticize the choreography for the second half of the fight, because, it's not no, the point is it's not supposed to be choreographed. It's supposed to show Luke is not fighting over brain, over what is logical in a fight. He's using the dark side. So when he swings, he's just swinging as if it's like a bat trying to kill someone. And he's like walking as if like galloping, like he's like almost like galloping, He's like galloping, like boom, boom, like on like as if he's like striding, like stride, stride, stride. He's going boom, boom. He's fighting over anger, and I think what I love about this is like dark side Luke is stronger than dark side Vader, and I think that was kind of the point of that scene. I love dark side Luke because like he doesn't turn dark side, but I love because for that second half of the fight, the real juice of that sequence, and this whole throne room stuff period just runs on such great emotional fumes. I mean, it's great because it's like you can feel the conflict in Luke and you can feel the conflict in Vader, because they're both people who like can see almost reason in both ways, where it's like Luke doesn't want to turn, but he just doesn't want to lose his father. I think you established very early on in this franchise that Luke wants to get away, but at the same time he wants family, he wants a father figure. When Owen talks about his father, he's very into it. He's very into this idea of wanting, family. And I think when Obi-Wan brought it up in New Hope, when they're talking, and when Obi-Wan first gives him the lightsaber in Return of the Jedi, Luke, very eager to learn, very eager to want to learn, to want to understand what it is like, what is the Force, what can it do, what are the good, what are the bad, all that stuff. Luke wants to understand and learn, And so I think moving on from that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about. So then Luke goes, and then puts Vader in the corner, slashes down, cuts it back thing, cuts his arm off, cuts a little bit of the bridge. And then at that moment, seeing that he had a metal hand, because like you could make the claim that the metal hand did nothing for him. There's no consequences, and I think there's no consequences as far as like physically having a hand or anything. But I feel like for me, there was consequences. The hand stuff was consequences, as in, you see, Vader has that metal arm and he does, and I think that them both having a metal arm for Luke and the audience is that both of them having a metal arm was a symbolic way to show that Luke is turning into a Vader. Luke is turning into the person he dreads not to be. He's turning into Vader, and I think the big key moment from Vader turning into Vader to Anakin is that moment. Vader's at Luke's mercy. You know? And remember, this whole film, you could just tell that Vader was conflicted. And even during the fight, he was conflicted. During the whole scene, he was just conflicted. During this film, he was conflicted with just his posture. Like, he's in the mask the whole time, but you could just tell with his stance, he's not as menacing in this film. As in, not in a bad way, but in a way where he can be menacing, but at the same time, when they're confronting on Endor, you can tell that he is very much of a father figure. He's trying to be a father figure on the light or the dark, you know, whatever way the clock turns. And so, in that moment, Vader's at Luke's mercy, right? And at that moment, Luke has that choice. Do I kill Vader? Do I kill one of my enemies? Or do I stand for what I believe? And I think the key moment was Luke says, I am a Jedi, like my father before me. And I think that was the moment that, number one, Luke became a Jedi. Because I remember Luke says to Obi-Wan earlier in the film on Endor, am I a Jedi? No. You must confront Vader again. And at that moment, Luke, remember, confronting Vader, Obi-Wan never explicitly said, you must kill Vader or the Emperor. He said, you must confront Vader. The lines were never, you must kill Vader. And so, at that moment, him saying, I'm a Jedi, like my father before me, was that moment of Luke becoming a Jedi. Throws the lightsaber aside. And I think, it's idiotic of him to just throw the lightsaber aside. It was his representation of, I'm putting everything on the line for my father. And that spoke to Vader. He gets up. You know, so be it, Jedi. And I love Force lightning. That's great. Emperor's great. And I love, like, when he's Force lightning, it will constantly show Luke, you know, struggling, and then obviously his shirt rips white. But it'll also show the Emperor, like, lightning kind of flashing a shadow on the Emperor. And then you see Vader get up. But something's different about him. He's not having that menacing posture and menacing breathing. And I think you could also tell that, so he's just standing there. And he is, this is the most conflicted Vader's ever been, right? Because he just saw his son practically sacrifice. He saw his son sacrifice himself for him. Because let's be honest, Vader, if Vader never stopped the Emperor, Luke would be dead. So I think it's that inspiration of Luke putting everything on the line for his father, that's the inspiration that talked to Anakin most, talked to Vader, and realized in his transformation. Because this whole film he was conflicted, but there has to be the defining moment to change, you know, to be better, you know, to be back to who you were. And so Luke's sacrifice led to Anakin coming back and led to his sacrifice. And I love, like, the lightning flashing on Vader's mask. And I don't like the whole no, but I mean, takes the Emperor, throws him over the end of the shaft. And, like, lightning kind of hit his mask. And I love, like, the subtle changes. And so long, Emperor. But god damn it, it's not the end. God damn it, man. Just end it there. Oh, wait. But I have this idea to bring him back in another film. I don't care. Whatever. But anyways, Emperor's gone. For now. What can I tell you? But anyways, I love, like, the subtle change in Vader's breathing, where he goes from his normal, iconic, heavy breathing to kind of being, like, soft, kind of raspy breathing, where he's, like, trying to breathe. It's as if he was, like, having, like, an asthma attack or something, where it's, like, he's, like, struggling to, like, instead of him just, like, breathing normally, except amplified, it feels more like he's struggling to breathe. But anyways, so now that the shield's down because of Han and Leia and stuff, the assault can now move into the Death Star. So the Millennium Falcon, a few A-Wings, and Wedge. I love that Wedge has a bigger role in this film than other films, you know. But he's really only in the final battle, but, I mean, he does have a pretty important role by helping destroy it. So anyways, I love them flying to the tunnels. The A-Wing, I think, gets destroyed. and another A-wing is kind of a distraction for the X-wings. They go in towards the reactor. Then, of course, Vader's struggling to move. Vader's struggling. Not Vader. At this point, he's Anakin, right? And he says, "I want to see my son with my own eyes, but you'll die." And he says, "I want to see my son with my own eyes." Then he takes off, and then you got these things. I mean, I don't see the switch to take off Vader's eyelashes. Well, not critically important. I think it makes sense because it's like, I mean, when you get burnt, it's not like you just grow eyelashes back when you get burnt and stuff. So, I mean, I guess that switch makes sense, I guess. But anyways, him talking. "You were right. I came to save you. I came to save you. I'm not doing that. You already have, son. You already have. You were right. Tell your sister. You were right." I mean, just seeing Anakin in the light was great. And that whole scene, and you could tell Luke cares about him, and Anakin cares about Luke, and all their camaraderie, all that stuff was great. Vader dies in his arms, and I don't know. It's just poetic ending where it's like you go from like them fighting each other, being two ends of the sides of the spectrum. One is just a generic, huge, menacing villain with, yes, a great mask, with a great voice, with that iconic breathing. He's not really generic, but a great villain. You turn that great villain into a masterpiece villain, into a villain that is more complex than you think, who's not just like the epitome of Darkseid, but someone who can be the epitome of someone blinded, literally and figuratively, but also have connections and relationships to characters on levels that never been seen before and never have, since been done before. Having your villain, your quintessential villain, be your, father figure. And it's like, to go from just having that villain that you're like, he's so menacing, he deserves every punch and kick blown at him. He deserves to die hard and get knocked down to the ground as soon as you see him. Like that opening scene in New Hope, when you see him, iconic breathing, so menacing, so villainous. And then his death, you feel bad for him. You don't want him to die. It's just a great way that they can do that. They can take a villain who seems so two-dimensional, but make him on complex levels never seen before and never, probably will see again, So yeah, that stuff was all great. Then they escape. Wedge and the Falcon with Lando blow up the arc reactor, or not, why do they call it the arc reactor? The reactor core to the Death Star. Luke and Vader escape on the shuttle. Well, Vader's already dead, but Luke escapes with Vader's body. And that obviously we already talked about. The satellite dish falls off. Wedge and Lando barely make it out, and Lando does his iconic scream. Ah! Death Star explodes. And then of course I love the scene where Luke burns Vader alive. That stuff was just great. When you see like the fire and Luke, the imagery of like Luke and like the shadow of the fire in Vader's body being burnt on fire, great stuff. And then you think of stuff like, I mean the Yub Dub, getting rid of the Yub Dub. I mean, I've never really seen the version with the Yub Dub, but it seems like a cool kind of catchy song. So, I mean, I would like to see like a version with that in it. But, I don't care. But I do love the special edition change where they show all the cities celebrating. Cloud City, Naboo, Tatooine, Coruscant. I like all that stuff. Those additions. An addition I don't like is adding Hayden Christensen's Anakin as a Force ghost. Because it's like, picture this. You've never seen your father before. Only a few years ago, you figure out, your father always hides behind a mask. You take off your father's mask. You see him discarded, old, and deformed. And then you see your father's ghost. But instead, it's your father from 30 years ago who looks nothing like he does now. like that's what I never understood is like how will Luke? How does like I'm sure you put the pieces together. Luke figures out that's his father, but like if I saw my father from like 20 years ago as a Force Ghost, but I never saw him what he looks like now. Like, can you imagine I never seen a single pit squeak of what my father looked like 30 years ago, and I never saw what he looked like ever? Like, can you imagine never seeing what your father looked like, except maybe him when he's like 80, and then you see a Force Ghost, and then you see a ghost of your father, and he's like 20. Like, isn't that not creepy? Like you're not looking at your father, you're just looking at like a friend of yours. Like it's so dumb because like they're we need to cram in the prequels, and it's like, how does Luke recognize who that is? How? Luke's never seen that guy, and even when he takes off the mask, he looks nothing like that guy. That always was weird about it. Like, I never, understood why add that guy. I mean, it was fine, cause like the guy, like having the guy who was in the suit, having the same guy. I think his name was Sebastian something. But having that guy be the Force Ghost, by having the guy who played Anakin in the unmasking scene a little bit earlier in the film, after the person who played Anakin in his death scene, him being the Force Ghost makes sense because that's the only version of Anakin he knows, that guy. But seeing your father who looks nothing like he does now because of the deformation and all that, 20 years earlier just makes no sense. But anyways, the celebration was great. Other than that, with Han reuniting and Luke and Leia and Lando and Wedge and Chewie and all our heroes, uniting together on Endor, and the Ewoks. And like I said, the Ewoks are like banjoing on a Stormtrooper helmet. I can only assume that they roasted them alive, for God's sakes. And I love the iconic shot of like the final shot where like all our heroes are together, and it was like a family portrait, and then of course the iconic, closing it into like a little circle, and that's it. That's the Star Wars original trilogy in a nutshell. So right now, left with the sequel trilogy, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about when it comes down to the sequel trilogy. But yeah, let's do this. Revenge of the Sith, or Return of the Jedi, full film breakdown, part 2. These two parts of Return of the Jedi, full film breakdown, part 1 and part 2, I mean, they probably took over like 50 minutes. I'm not even sure. But yeah. Stay tuned for more videos. Come right at you.